All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we're looking at something pretty incredible. It's a single, powerful verse from a very ancient and, let's be honest, kind of mysterious text called the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. We're zeroing in on verse 39, also known as Dharnes 16. And what's so amazing is that this one verse, it contains a whole complete meditation technique, basically coded right into the language.
And here it is. At first glance, it reads like a riddle, doesn't it? Okay, recitation of pranava, a sacred sound. That seems straightforward enough. But then it gets cryptic, fast. It's talking about a protracted phase, a void that has eminent energy, and then the yogi attains the void. So how can you attain nothing? And how can nothing be powerful? Well, that is the exact puzzle we are going to solve.
Yeah, that's really the heart of it, isn't it? When you and I hear the word void, our brains immediately go to, well, nothingness, an empty, black space. It might even sound a little unsettling. But what we're about to discover is that this ancient text is pointing to something else entirely, something way more powerful.
So let's deconstruct this verse piece by piece, starting right at the beginning. It opens with a Sanskrit word, pranavadi. Now, anyone who's been around yoga has probably heard pranava. That's the sacred sound Om. But the real secret, the little hidden key, is in that suffix, adi. It basically means and so on, or etc. And that one little word changes everything.
Because what that adi does is it blows the whole thing wide open. It reveals that you actually have options. The technique isn't just about Aum. You can also use the Shaiva Pranava, Hrim, which connects to the energy of pure consciousness. Or there's the Shakta Pranava, Hrim, which is all about the energy of the divine feminine, or Shakti. The text is giving you freedom, the freedom to choose a sound that really truly resonates with you.
Okay, so we've picked our sound. Step 1, done. The next cryptic phrase we have to tackle is the protracted phase, or plutinanti in Sanskrit. Now, this sounds super technical and academic, right? But you're not going to believe the simple, down-to-earth analogy the ancient commentators used to explain it.
Yep, a rooster's crow. I'm not kidding. Just think about it for a second. Cock-a-doodle-doo, right? You've got a short sound, a longer one, and then that final drawn-out doo that just kind of hangs in the air. That last super extended part, that's exactly what the text is talking about.
Now, to put a finer point on it, Sanskrit phonetics actually has names for these lengths. You have hrasva, which is short, just one beat. You have dirgha, which is long, 2 beats. And then you have pluta, which literally means protracted, 3 or more beats. It's that final elongated sound. So when you're chanting it's that final that you stretch out for as long as you can. That is your pluta. And this brings us to the most crucial point. This is the key. The technique isn't really about making the sound. I know that sounds weird, but stay with me. The real focus is on the transition. It's that precise moment at the very end of the long chant where the vibration just dissolves and silence is born. That little junction point, that tiny gap, that's the doorway. So what do we do when we find this doorway? The verse says we contemplate over the void, or shunya. And this brings us right back to that central mystery we started with. If this void isn't that scary, empty nothingness we all imagine, then what on earth is it?
Okay, this right here is probably the biggest mental shift we have to make. In this context, the void, or shunya, isn't an absence, it's a presence. It's not empty, it's actually brimming with pure potential. It's not a dead, dull silence, but a vibrant, alive stillness. You could almost think of it as the state of pure, unfiltered awareness right before it decides to become a thought. The text actually defines shunya as a state of consciousness that's free from 4 different layers of support. Think of it like peeling an onion. First, you're free from external supports, things like tables and walls. Then, internal supports, your own feelings, like joy or sadness. Then, even deeper, the elemental building blocks of reality. And finally, the deepest layer of all, your subconscious imprints, those deep-seated patterns that tend to run our lives. The technical term for being in this state of shunya is nirvikalpa, and it's so important to get this. This is not like being asleep. In sleep, you're not aware. Here, your awareness is at its absolute peak, but it's not focused on any one thing. It's just aware of being aware. I love this analogy of it being like returning your mind to its original factory settings, pure, pristine, and totally unmodified. which brings us full circle, right back to that beautiful paradox in the verse. If the void is empty of all these supports and thoughts, how can it possibly have the most eminent energy? How can nothing be a powerhouse? Well, let's use a more modern analogy. Think of a black hole. From way out here, it just looks like a patch of empty space, right? Pure nothingness. But we know that if you get close, its gravitational pull is so immense, so powerful, that it draws everything in, even light itself. This state of shunya, it acts in a very similar way. And this is the key insight, and it's so cool. That most eminent energy of the void is called para-shakti, and it's like this powerful magnetic force. You use the technique, the chanting, to get yourself close enough to the edge, but then at a certain point, your effort stops. The state itself takes over and just pulls you in. You don't achieve it, you are absorbed by it. So what does it mean to be absorbed? I know, it might sound a little scary, like you're being erased or something, but it's not annihilation. The text says the yogi attains the void, which means they realize their true nature is Bhairava, which is just a name for ultimate undivided consciousness. It's not a destruction of the self, it's an expansion into your true infinite self. So the practice itself is this brilliant two-stage process. You start with what's called anava upaya. That's the path of effort, the doing phase. That's you chanting the sound. But as you focus on that void at the end of the sound, you seamlessly shift gears into Shaktopaya, the path of awareness. And at this point, all the doing falls away. All that's left is effortless being. I really love this analogy. The chanting, the whole technique, think of it as a boat. It's absolutely essential to get you across the choppy river of your restless mind. But what's the goal? It's not to stay in the boat forever. The goal is to reach the other shore, that state of pure being, and then step out, leaving the boat behind. The technique is the vehicle, not the destination. So, to wrap up, the amount of wisdom packed into this one verse is just staggering. The entry point isn't the sound, but the silence that comes after. The void isn't emptiness, it's a vibrant, potential-filled awareness. And you don't get there by trying harder, but by allowing the energy of that void to absorb you. So this brings me to a final thought for you. If the doorway is in the gap where sound dissolves into silence, where else can we find these gaps in our daily lives? What about that tiny pause between your in-breath and your out-breath? Or the deep stillness that follows a sudden loud noise? Or maybe even the microscopic space between two of your thoughts? Perhaps these little voids, these little invitations, are all around us, all the time.